Hi, everybody. I just wanted to send out a weekly message again to let you know that I'm here in case you have any questions or if you wanted to just chat about the whole, why do we care about this kind of thing, this philosophizing? I'm always open. You just have to get in touch with me and we can set up a meeting. Another thing I wanted to do was to kind of connect what we did the first week, the Apology of Socrates or the Apologia of Socrates, to these first couple of chapters that I wrote myself, called Getting Philosophy Back and On Origins, which is from a textbook that I've been struggling to finish for the last year. I want you to be thinking about how many of the things that were brought out in the Apology of Socrates as why Socrates did the things that he did, why he attempted to defend his actions, that he wasn't actually corrupting the youth and he wasn't undermining society. He was just trying to get people to be honest in in what they claim to know and to really be critical of their beliefs. I think you'll see that a lot of that sort of thing is there in the readings that I have for you this week. Getting philosophy back primarily is really, in a sense, sort of trying to get to that place that Socrates was at, that time where, we remember that we have this critical faculty, that we can challenge the way things appear to be, and the status quo or the way things have always been done. And in challenging them, that doesn't mean that you're going to just, okay, they've been challenged, and so therefore they're challenging is throwing them out the window, right? This is a big problem that we have a lot of times in the Americas, and Europe, and really kind of throughout the world. But I'll stick with the United States because we're in the United States. So a lot of times we believe that to challenge an idea is to outright reject it. And people on the left or the right can have this reaction. Okay. It's a common reaction. Okay. Sometimes to just challenge an idea shows, when you do that to someone, it shows how that person reacts to your challenge, shows how much the idea is either just something that they have been kind of holding, something that they've just sort of have a slight grip on, and it's not that important to them because, they don't really react that much to it, or you challenge something that another person believes wholeheartedly, and they take the challenge as an attempt to reject everything they believe, because they are so profoundly, deeply identified with that. And again, this can happen the right, the center, the left. It doesn't matter what political spectrum you fall on. It doesn't matter what religious organization you belong, institutions you may belong to, whatever your religious uh, devotions may be. It doesn't matter what kind of businesses you work for, you have anybody, whether you would consider them a left-leaning progressive or a centrist liberal or a Reaganite conservative or a Trump, um, make America great again person. It doesn't matter what part of the spectrum you're on. When you challenge someone's ideas that they have a great deal of belief in, it's very likely that they're going to react to that in a way in which they believe you're attempting to destroy their belief system, destroy their world, to take apart the things that they wholeheartedly believe in. This is why we have to give philosophy back, right? There are things that are done across the political spectrum, things that are taught across the religious spectrum of all the different belief systems, things that are done in business, things that are done in school, that, no matter whether you think it's progressive or centrist or conservative, whether, whatever it is, we have to be able to go in and actually question ideas. And that means that we have to get philosophy back because we need to learn how to care about as maybe Plato would say, the truth, the beautiful, and the good, right? And the true, the beautiful, and the good doesn't have a political affiliation. It doesn't have a religious affiliation. It doesn't have a business or corporate affiliation. It doesn't have a gaming affiliation. It doesn't have an affiliation in any of those things. The truth, the beautiful, and the good can appear anywhere at any time, and it's only going to be appreciated by us if we're willing to be open to asking the kinds of questions that really allow it to flourish, right? So right now, we're divided a lot in this country, all the spectrums, right? And there are these just micro divisions that have occurred, these cracks in all of the different areas of our lives where it's just really difficult for people to have an open, honest conversation. And there are people all over YouTube, all over diverse social media, all over television and in the news media who are all having what they call honest conversations. But it becomes very apparent when you try to really push deeper into what they're talking about, like Socrates probably would have tried to do. They're not really having these conversations in good faith. There's the ability to something to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about the important things that you believe in and the kinds of things that you see leading people's decisions and choices around you, right? Is you can begin to ask yourself, why has this opinion, and they're mostly opinions, why has this opinion become one that we don't question? Or why has this opinion become one that is always trashed, always just thrown aside, right? Because either way it goes, whether it's an opinion that's never challenged or it's an opinion that's always challenged, the question first is, why is this one never challenged? Why is this one always challenged? And then really kind of digging in to ask yourself to look, uh, at in a more profound way at the reasons why we hold the beliefs that we hold, right? And this means, sometimes what this means is you challenge a belief, say that is held by almost everybody, and you ask yourself why. What is it that makes this belief so firm, right? We could start as people living in the United States of America with a phrase that is sort of the beginning of our social and political world as Americans, and that would be the opening lines of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Now, here's the thing, that is an assertion. It is a claim being made by Thomas Jefferson and the people who signed and ratified the Declaration of Independence. It has become sort of a founding ideal for Americans. All men, all people, we the people, are created equal. We are endowed by the Creator, right? By the original, the origin, with certain unalienable rights. What does that mean, unalienable? That means that they can't ever be taken away from us. Yes, they can be curbed. Yes, they can be trounced upon, yes, but they can never really truly be taken away from us, right? Nobody can reach into our being. Nobody can reach into our soul and yank away our unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. But that's the rights. Yeah, somebody can take our life. Somebody can put us in prison. Somebody can, stand in the way of the pursuit of our happiness, right? The issue here is that they cannot take away your right, meaning your ability to experience those things. They can only cause you to experience the opposite, or they can put you into a situation where it appears that those things have been taken away from you. Now, I realize that that's, cutting the fine hair, splitting the fine hairs that philosophers are often famous for doing. But this is the key point, right? Is that when you challenge an idea that's been upheld, and I think that we all know that phrase, not we the people, but we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed with certain unalienable rights, uh, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that you can take all of those things and you can see that they're understood differently depending on where you're at in society economically, where you're at in society politically, where you're at in society, by way of your religious affiliations. You're going to interpret that phrase differently. So on the one hand, we can say that everybody holds, most people hold these things to be true. When you challenge them, they could get very upset. Well, not all people are created equal. Well, people don't deserve life. Well, who says that liberty is that great of a thing, right? The pursuit of happiness, you just sound like all you're doing is chasing pleasure. These are things that could be said to a person. And if they're done in a kind of offhand way, I can kind of understand why somebody might get perturbed, right? Because sometimes people are just trolling, sometimes they're just being jerks. But if they're done in a careful way where a person seriously is asking, what does this mean? Right? That we hold, who's the we? Is there a mouse in Thomas Jefferson's pocket when he's talking? Is he really speaking for all the people who actually signed the document? Did all the people who signed the document actually understand what the hell he was saying? Did he really mean it? It's right that all people are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I emphasize liberty because Thomas Jefferson famously was the owner of slaves. He did not uh, right? He did not give up owning slaves. Many of the first presidents owned slaves. Many of the people who signed the document, the Declaration of Independence, owned slaves. What did they mean when they said we? Did they only, right? So you can ask that question. It doesn't have to be slipshod, it doesn't have to be trolling. And I'm not trying to undermine by challenging how we hold it. I'm not trying to undermine these ideas. I hold these ideas to be very important. They are part of who I am, not only as an American, as a Texan. I believe that they have inspired a great deal of humanizing activity around the world. Really, right? It's not the shot that was heard at Concord that went around the world, and the American Rebellion. The Declaration of Independence is the thing that went around the world and has had a great deal of influence on all kinds of people. So I hold these ideas, but in challenging how we take them for granted, that's not the attempt to reject them, right? Then there are other ideas that uh, you know, that we always just sort of reject out of hand automatically right off the bat, right? One of those ideas might be that something from Karl Marx. Actually, that's one that I can always, because we live in Texas and it's always real, it's very easy to just sort of knee-jerkily reject communism. I'm not advocating for communism. I'm simply saying that this is an idea, a concept that can be understood, that can be challenged, that can be explored, and we can figure out better reasons for why we would reject it rather than just rejecting it out of hand because it in a sense, it's sort of like it's challenged and not held, because to hold it and kind of stay with it for a little bit, it might challenge something that we actually do hold as kind of common here, which is, the need for a kind of individual capitalist ability to succeed and get ahead versus a social a social organizing that utilizes capitalism to help everybody, right? And that's a very important idea, right? Because the first thing when we want to like challenge this idea of Marxist communism, which gets usually rejected out of hand, and we challenge why is it rejected out of hand. The first thing to recognize is that the economic engine at the heart of socialism is still capitalism. That capitalism and communism are not opposites, right? Capitalism is an economic engine. The way capitalism is structured in the United States is called individual or personal capitalism. It allows the individual to succeed as much as they possibly can succeed, to accumulate as much as they can possibly accumulate. Socialism has a variation that we would call state or collective capitalism. Collective capitalism is simply about all, rising tides lift all boats. We don't, you can have personal belongings and you can even have a little more than the next guy, but, you can't accumulate all of it. You can't accumulate the majority of it, right? So the reason to bring this up is something to challenge, and why we need philosophy, why we need to get to the origins of our historical way of thinking, is to be able to sort of like ask ourselves, well, why do we just reject this out of hand? How is it, if it's the case that capitalism is an economic engine at both the heart of right, liberalism, in this sense, the American political structure is still called a liberal structure because it's about free trade, free press, free speech, freedom of assembly, blah, blah, blah. Liberal just in this sense just means free, right? Versus a social, here then the emphasis is on the collective, right? So the liberal capitalism versus social capitalism. The economic engine is at the heart of each, but somehow in the course of us accepting a sort of kind of reject out of hand right off the bat, do not hold this idea communism is workable, socialism is workable, blah, 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 right? It's already, if you just do a little bit of push on it, you realize, well, wait, in the overwhelming majority of conversations, whether it's the left-leaning press, the right-leaning press, it doesn't matter. There is this assumption made that capitalism is the opposite of communism. Well, if that's true, how is China the second largest capitalist economy in the world? Right? See, we're confusing the economic engine with the ideology, right? So the question here is, why does this idea of communism get rejected and not held, right? The idea of a kind of liberal capitalism is adopted, and people get upset when you begin to challenge it. These are the kind of things that Socrates did. These are the kind of things that I do. It's the sort of thing, and you can kind of see from how Socrates was treated, but also how public intellectuals in this society are treated when they begin to challenge, just to try to figure out why people hold the ideas they do, especially when those ideas to be seem to go in some kind of way contradictory to other ideas that they may hold, right? And the best example there again is the one I gave a minute ago. Thomas Jefferson holds very high, almost utopian ideas of democracy or republican democracy, right? Yet he did not object to slavery being constitutionally enshrined. He did not, object to the idea that the slaves that he owned should should be kept, right? Should be those people should be kept in servitude. He didn't challenge any of those things. So what did he mean when he said we the people? God, I keep doing that. Parts. What did he mean when he said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal"? Right? Uh, People hold contradictory ideas all the time, and this is the main thing for philosophers. You're never going to get rid of all the contradictions in yourself, and you're never going to be 100% consistent, but you will have these moments where you can recognize that you're being contradictory, that you're being inconsistent, right? Uh, there are, like in this last presidential election, to me, there were inconsistencies and contradictions across the board, whether you were talking about the Republicans or the Democrats or the Greens or, the Green Party or the Libertarian Party. When I listened to the people talk, I heard so many contradictions and inconsistencies to what they were saying. This is why philosophy needs to get back. This is why we started off by looking at Socrates, who's a person who challenged what people claimed to know and what people believed, especially insofar as their beliefs were getting in the way of them being of seeing truth, getting in the way of them appreciating beauty, and getting in the way of them doing good, right? And so um, that's where we have to uh, do our best to reawaken philosophy. And part of that means we go back to the origin. In this sense, the origin means going back to the historical roots, right? And that's a great thing to do. I'm all about intellectual history. Okay. So the first thing we did was we went to the historical root of Socrates. Socrates literally may be the first person to call himself a philosopher. It's not a word. Philosopher was not a word, and philosophy were not words that were actually very common at that time in Greece, right? So he very well may have been the first person to even use that word. So we go back to this origin point, right? We look at what it was he was doing. We think about this now in terms of how it's been influential in the history of Europe and the United States, and has even gone out beyond that into places where Socrates studied in China, he studied in Egypt, he studied about in Japan, he studied about in, all over the world in all kinds of different places, right? So we go back to that origins point, right? But now we begin looking too at why we want to do something like unto what Socrates did, right? I don't want any of you to get to the point that you challenge things so much that your local citizenry decides you need to be exiled or put in prison or even given the death penalty. But I do want you to get to a place where you engage this historical tradition of challenging those things that we hold and rarely ever challenge, and also challenging how there are things that we do not hold to be the case, but we never really go back and fully examine why. Okay. So that's kind of how we're bridging the two together. I'll have another one of these little videos to share with you in a few days about how we're going to move from this concept of a kind of historical origin philosophizing to the place of philosophizing arising out of the source of the human condition, right? And I'll get a little more into that in my next little video. And that's also what the next reading is going to be about after this week. This is also the first week you're going to do a discussion. So be sure you give yourself plenty of time to read through the discussion prompt and be thinking about that while you're doing the work you're doing. All right. Much peace to all of you. I was really happy to see how well everyone did on the quizzes. So let's keep up the good work. And again, if anybody wants to make an appointment with me to ask questions about the readings, or you want to make an appointment with me to just mind walk, as I like to call it, and dialogue and just kind of see where things go, I'm always open. So just get in touch with me. I'll talk to you later on. Bye bye.